Okay, so my first attempt at making this video got cut off. I am a little long-winded at times, so I'm gonna just jump right into this. So you know your C major scale to be Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. Simple, simple stuff, right? Right, so what I'm gonna teach you is the scale degrees. It's very simple. Every scale has degrees, which is just a numerical denotator? I don't know, for the placement of a note in the scale, okay? So the first degree of the scale is always going to be where you start pretty much. In the C major scale, it's going to be a C. So, first, I think you know where I'm going with this. The second is going to be the second note you play. And then the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. Now notice I don't give another number for the high C here. That's because it's still a C. I mean, there's no eighth, okay? You don't give a different number to the same note in a scale. It goes back to the first, it's just the higher octave of the scale, okay? So, getting right into it, I'm going to show you how to form, well, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. In a major scale, the way that you get a major scale is from taking your root, which is, you know, the key that you're in this case is C. For a major scale, you add a whole step, which is, I'm pretty sure I already told you, that's a half step, just one, you know, to whatever up, half step, 2 half steps, makes a whole step, okay? So you take the root, you add a whole step, and then another whole step, and then a half step, okay? Then another whole step, so from here, whole step, whole step, whole step, and half step, okay? So you can make a major scale starting with any key on here if you go from the root, a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, okay? So just to give you an example, let's take whatever, E flat, all right? To make an E flat major scale, you would go from E flat, one whole step, which would be F, another whole step, which would be G, then a half step, then a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, and a half step, okay? If you notice, it has a very similar sound between those two scales. That's because the intervals, which is the whole steps and the half steps, between the notes are the same, okay? So, if I were to play that E flat again, this is hard to do with one hand, and I was to designate the degrees to it, the E flat would be the first degree, then the second, which would be an F, then the third, which would be a G, the fourth, which would be an A flat. You could say G sharp, but typically whenever you're talking about like a whole scale or whatever, you don't want to use the same letter twice, as much as you can, I guess, which is why you'd want to say A flat. And then B flat would be, where was I? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fifth. C would be the sixth. D would be the seventh. And then you're back to your E flat, okay? So, to make a major chord, a major triad chord, you know, a chord is whenever you're playing keys at the same time, right? So there's two ways that you can think about this. The way that I learned is basically counting up the half steps to get to the notes you need. So for a C major triad, you would take the root, which is C, okay, and then you would go up 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. You get E. And then from E, you would go up 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3, and you get G. Okay, that's a C major chord. Another way to think of a major triad is you would take the root, the third, and the fifth. Play those together, you get a major triad. So with our E flat example, you could do the same thing. You take your E flat, go up 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps, you get a G, and 1, 2, 3 half steps. This is difficult to do with one hand, I'm sorry. And you get a B flat. And there you have an E flat major triad. Okay? And again, you can do that with any key on here. It's the same thing, like I said. It would be the first, the third, and the fifth of an E flat major scale. Okay? For a minor triad, I'm not going to do every single example with the E flat, just understand that you can do that. I'm going to just do the examples with C from now. Okay? For the minor triad, you would take the root, count up 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3, and then 4 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get C, E flat, and G, and that is a minor triad chord, C minor. Okay, another way to think about that, you take the first, you take the third, and you make it flat, and then the fifth. Do that with any scale, and you got your minor triad. Okay? Now, a 7th chord, you would take the root plus 4 plus 3, and here's where I'm going to trick you, plus 3. 1, 2, 3. That is a 7th chord. You're probably thinking, why don't you play the 7th? Well, because if I played the 7th, that would be a major 7th chord. Okay, so for a 7th chord, it's the first, the third, the fifth, and a flat 7th. I can't tell you why it's designated that way, but it just is, okay? And then again, the major 7th, first, third, fifth, and 7th, okay? Or root plus 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 1, 2, 3 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now a minor 7th, take your root plus 3, 1, 2, 3 plus 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 plus, it sounds familiar, that's that minor triad, and then you add 1, 2, 3. Okay, so a major 7th chord, root, flat 3rd, 5th, flat 7th. Okay. For an augmented chord, it's the root plus 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's an augmented chord. The root, the third, and the flat 6th. Okay, has kind of a dissonant sound, used for creepy sounding music a lot of the time. And then lastly, the diminished chord. You take the root, add 3, 1, 2, 3, and add 3, 1, 2, 3. It's a C diminished chord. So the root, or the first, flat 3rd, flat 5th. And again, you can do that starting with any root note at all on here. Next time, I'll try to get into some other kinds of scales that you can play. You'll learn a little bit more about intervals and things like that. yeah, I'll put all this shorthand in the comments or whatever, the description. Happy playing!